So leaky gut syndrome, we've heard about it, right? We hear it's tied to everything from just every kind of disease you could think of. And, when I first heard about it, I was like, okay, what's this all about? And how can it be tied? How can the gut be tied to so many things? So I've learned a lot along the way, and I want to share some of this with you. So first, let's just take a look at a sketch of the gut. This is the lining of a gut. This is typical for anywhere from, there's slight changes along the path of the gut, but basically anywhere from the end of the esophagus to the anus, we're going to have this basic histology, these 4 layers. Histology means the study of the cell. So I want to point out 2 structures on it. So they're layers, right? These layers are from the outside down here to the inside. And this white space up here would be the lumen of the gut. We've talked about the layers before. The lumen is where the food actually passes down. And these finger-like projections, the villi, is where the absorption happens. So of water and of nutrients. So I want you to, we're going to focus on the villi just for a second. But I also want to point out one other structure in this slide, and that's called the Peyer's patch or lymphoid nodules. These patches, and we'll see, I hope I'm going to blow your mind with a picture of the patches a little later. This is where the gut immunity lies. This is one place where the gut immunity lies. And this is a huge factor. Now, down here, the pink things, they're the muscles that propel your gut, that they create peristalsis. We're not really talking about gut motility today, but I want you to also see these yellow projections. There are 2 major layers of these yellow projections. That's your enteric nervous system. That's the nerves in your gut. And that's how your gut can coordinate its motility, the motion of squeezing the food along. And that's how the gut interacts with your other neurotransmitters. So there's a lot going on in the gut. Okay, let's take a look at the villi though. So remember, villi are finger-like projections. So you see how we jumped down to just look at one villus cross section. And I want to point out a couple things. So we know that this is the lumen where the food substances are passing, the gut bacteria are in there. And this is just one villus. Imagine how many we have lining the entire gut. But inside of each villus, there's a network of capillaries, which are represented by the red arterioles, the blue venules, and the capillaries are the purple areas in between. That's where absorption happens in the blood. So we really do need a lining here to protect the bloodstream from what's in the lumen, right? So the gut lining is very important. But between the capillaries is this green structure, and that's called a lacteal. That's part of our lymphatic system. And this is how, let's say, what did I hear? The Center for Science and, oh my goodness, I can't remember the name of the group, but they wrote an article calling fettuccine Alfredo a heart attack on a plate. And I'm like, okay, how can that be? But what happens is you eat fettuccine Alfredo, which has a lot of fat that's absorbed directly into the lacteal, and the lacteal carries it back to your main circulation, dumping in up in near your neck, and it can cause a fatty embolus. You can also get a fatty embolus with a broken leg, so we're very careful about that. But yeah, that little embolus, that fat globule from that heavily fatty meal can cause a heart attack, depending on where that embolus goes. Okay, but we're talking about the gut. All right. So, yeah, we talked about I do want to say one other thing about these lacteals, because they have like one-way doors, one-way trap doors in. And if there are any cancer cells around, the cancer cells can get into the lacteal and travel from there to anywhere in the body. It's amazing. So we don't hear about that a lot just in general conversation, but the immune vessels in our lacteals are very, very important. Okay, now remember, finger-like projections are the villi, right? Well, on the villi are something called microvilli. Do you see these little tiny hairs on top of the finger-like projections? That is where some serious absorption happens. And our microvilli, and I'm going to take one little square, you see this, of the lining of the villus, and we're going to look at that. So this is that one little square at the top of, or on the lining of the villus, and these are the microvilli. Okay, let me go back. Here's the finger-like projections, the villi. We see 1, 2, 3, 4 of them, 5. We see 5 of them in this picture. One of them we've cut in half. And now we're looking at the lining of the villus, and that's the microvilli. And here we have one that's normal, and here we have one that's leaky. So normally your microvilli have a protective layer of mucus, great mucus layer, right? And the mucus is part of your immune system. And they have something called tight junctions, where the cells of the lining are tightly bound together. And so they can keep things out that are supposed to stay out, and they can allow things in that are supposed to get in. But the healthy tight junctions mean a healthy gut lining. Now, and remember, right inside of that lining was our blood vessel, and it's not shown here, but also our lymphatics. Okay, now let's look over here at the leaky, inflamed gut lining. Well, what's happened? Our mucus production isn't so great. See the mucus here, this light blue layer? Not so much here. And the tight junctions, not so tight. So the tight junctions are, they're calling this faulty or quote unquote leaky. So what can get in? Bad bacteria can get in, food particles that are too large can get in. In a healthy gut, the food particle gaps are around 1 to 7 microns. Now, a micron is really, really, really small, but 1 to 7 is a gap size for food particles to get in. In a leaky gut, food particles up to 200 microns can get in. So that's over 20 times the size that's normal. So there are all kinds of things that get into a leaky gut or get past a leaky gut lining that are not supposed to. Also, things like gluten, ding, 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 can cause inflammation of the gut that causes it to not function properly. Okay, so that's the basic reason for a leaky gut, is that the actual gut lining is leaky, just the way we see it. And that's because of inflammation. That's because of a bad ratio of bad bacteria to good bacteria and affecting the gap junctions. But then all of those things can get into the bloodstream. That's a problem, right? They also get into the lymphatics. That's a problem, but they also can trigger right on the spot. They can trigger inflammatory reactions. Let me show you. Okay, this is a real cross section of a gut. And these are villi. Now, they don't look perfect. So this is the lumen in here, the clear. They don't look perfect because, it's hard to get a perfect live, or not live, but a perfect real sample in a slide this thin. This is a really, really thin section. But what I want to show you is compared to this picture, see this Peyer's patch? Each little dot on this Peyer's patch is a cluster of immune cells just waiting to be triggered. And we love that, right? That's not our front line of defense, but that is a huge line of defense right in our intestines. Take a look though in this, and here we go. Here's another depiction of those immune cells. Like I said, just waiting to take care of any bacteria or inflammatory pathogens that come across. They're not showing those cells here, but you see these big lumps. These are Peyer's patches. Okay, so I hope this is giving you an idea that your immune system in your gut is huge. Each one of those little dots are little clusters of cells just waiting. And if the wrong chemical comes along or a wrong particle comes along, they're going to jump into action. Well, guess what happens? A little bit of a, let's say, peanut, because there are a lot of people that have peanut allergies. Now, in a normal gut, that peanut would be broken down, and would possibly not cause any problems whatsoever. But in a leaky gut, bigger chunks of the peanut can get in, and I'm not chunks, it's still really small, okay? But bigger portions of the peanut can get in and just happen to trigger some of these immune cells. They're like, oh, wait a minute, that doesn't belong. That's an alert. And it causes an immune response. It causes your body to start producing antibodies against the peanut. It causes all kinds of immune signaling. Remember, we talked about chemotaxis last time, sending out signals to bring immune cells and immune substances to an area. Now, if what gets through is a bacteria like salmonella, like you have some, okay, this happened to me, all right. I used to travel to Ghana, West Africa, and Togo every year. And so I used to have to get vaccines every year. And one year, the vaccination for typhoid, Salmonella typhi, was not injected, it was oral. I'm like, oral, I'm taking Salmonella, but that's because they wanted the immune system directly in my gut to be exposed to this salmon. And let me tell you, I knew the second I swallowed that pill, I knew I was being invaded by Salmonella. Weakened, but I could, I don't even know how to describe it, but I wasn't sick, it wasn't like food poisoning, but I knew my immune system was being triggered. Great, and I went to Ghana, came back, beautiful time, beautiful trip, beautiful country, beautiful people. Came back one day at work at Hopkins in the urgent care center. We ordered Chinese food and it was bad. It was bad Chinese food, but we couldn't tell, until later. And so about an hour or two after we had the Chinese food, I felt a little queasy and then it was gone. The rest of the people that ate the Chinese food were sick for days. But I had that immunity against Salmonella in my gut, and it kicked right in as soon as it was exposed, got rid of the problem. And, I was very thankful that I had gone to Ghana that year, because had I not had that oral typhoid vaccine, I wouldn't have had the same immunity built up. Okay. So that was great for an acute one-time exposure. But if you're eating something like gluten that triggers that immune response day after day, over and over, chronically, then that is the impetus for many, many diseases, including quote unquote autoimmune diseases. So I hope that gave you a really good idea of the importance of and the impact of the immune system in the gut. That's why they say 70% of your immune system is in the gut. You got teeming millions upon millions of immune cells and immune tissues ready to respond to anything that it doesn't think is supposed to be there. So a blessing if we eat right, and if we just get exposed one time to something, a curse if we're continually eating wrong, triggering the gut immune system and causing an immunity inflammation throughout the body. Okay, so what else do I have for you? And these things will be in the show resources in the description box of the YouTube video. Here we go. Okay, so I've got some great articles. Healthline has an article, Is Leaky Gut Syndrome a Real Condition? An Unbiased Look. Now this article was 2017. It's usually, that's a little old for us, but it's very good information. And when you scroll down, there are a couple of more articles, including, but I pulled this one out, the Leaky Gut Diet Plan, a little more recent, 2019. Foods to eat, foods to avoid, sample menu. So some good information there. We know, and you will find in the show resources, a link to the video by Dr. Peter Glidden called 12 Bad Foods. And those are foods you must avoid, including the top 4, which produce gluten. So wheat, barley, rye, and oats are the top 4 of the 12. But that is always available in our show resources. I wanted to go to PubMed.gov because, we like not just popular articles, although Healthline is a medically reviewed journal. I went to the to PubMed.gov, PubMed.gov. Oh, there it is, PubMed.gov. And in the search bar, I typed in leaky gut, but I also typed in the word review. So that means these articles have looked at several research studies on leaky gut. And I narrowed my focus to the last 5 years. So I just want to share some of these titles with you. Leaky gut mechanisms, measurements, and clinical implications in humans. And you can click here and get the full article. Leaky gut, leaky brain. I love that one. Again, the article is available. Exercise-induced stress behavior, gut microbiota, brain axis, and diet. So this is a systemic review for athletes. Leaky gut as a dangerous signal for autoimmune diseases. Well, I think now we know how leaky gut can be, here we go. In pathological conditions, the permeability, that means the leakiness of the epithelial lining, the gut lining, may be compromised, allowing the passage of toxins, antigens, and bacteria to enter the bloodstream, creating a leaky gut. Well, that is a leaky gut entering the bacteria, but then creating a chronic immune or a chronic inflammatory response. Check out this one. All disease begins in the parenthesis, leaky, close parenthesis, gut. And it's talking about chronic inflammatory diseases. So here we got probiotics, prebiotics, leaky gut and autoimmunity, gut dysbiosis. And just in the last 5 years, we've got 156 reviews on leaky gut syndrome. So a lot of really good information available. I also went to YouTube and typed in leaky gut, and I found it's an absolute treasure trove of information about leaky gut syndrome. And I was so delighted to see this video by Thomas DeLauer. Now, he is one of my keto gurus, and he's a nerd, he's a geek, and he goes into research articles, and I just love his information on keto, but he did an article or a video on leaky gut syndrome. And it was only like 5 or 6 minutes, but he gave a lot of information that time. I love Dr. Sten Ekberg. He gave a great discussion of leaky gut syndrome. And there was one more. And I think if I remember, I think I will put the links to these articles. I'm looking for, there he is, Dr. Berg. I was looking for him. He also did a really good job of talking about leaky gut syndrome. Now, he talked more about the role of vitamin C, whereas Thomas DeLauer talked more about the role of glutathione. But again, it's all great information and very practical. So I'm going to cut myself off there. I could talk about this all day, because it's so fascinating to me how those little teeny cells, I mean, I remember the first time I saw Peyer's patches under a microscope that I had prepared, I was shocked because they only show you that one little, that one little nodule on the drawings, but there are millions and millions of immune cells there. So there you can see where the origin of all of this inflammation, uh, you know, can stem from, and also why controlling what we eat can have such an impact on not just on our gut, but on our entire health.